Blog Talk Radio.
You're listening to Talent Culture's T-Chat Radio. The World of Work is live now on the radio with Megan M. Biro and Kevin W. Grossman, because middle initials count.
Come down, turn the radio on. Take my hand, turn the radio on. Come on, my favorite song, baby. Let's dance, turn the radio on.
Welcome everybody out there in Talent Culture T-Chat Show land. It is Wednesday. It is April 22nd. But what time is it? It is not 7 p.m. Eastern. It is now 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time. It's our new T-Chat time and channel. With you as always is Kevin W. Grossman here in Santa Cruz, California, and as always, the lovely and talented Megan M. Biro. Hi, Megan.
What time is it? That's all I have to say, everybody.
Exactly right.
It's afternoon. I'm here in Cambridge today. No travels. My next set of travels is going to be coming to you guys live in Cork, Ireland. Shout out to all my friends out there in the IT Euro Tech Cluster. Kevin and I will be flying out to see you guys real soon. So we'll be sharing some updates with everybody here on the interwebs about our special live T-Chat that's going to be happening there in Ireland. And what's its date for that, by the way, Kevin?
That's it. That is going to be May 6th.
May 6th, everybody.
Yes.
So get that on your calendars. We're stoked. I've actually never been to Ireland. So this is like my very first trip there. It's going to be super sweet.
I know.
I know. So yeah, this feels kind of funny, but I mean, I'm mainlining a little caffeine right now. I'm on a new wavelength, new beginnings here for Talent Culture. We've got lots more exciting updates for everybody in the coming weeks. Oh my gosh! I mean, if anyone's tuning into our blog, the blogging community called TalentCulture.com, be on the lookout because we've got a sexy new WordPress theme coming your way. Okay,
indeed.
Put your seatbelts on, everybody, in case. All right. So listen, I kind of want to just dive right in, and I want to take a moment to just give a special thank you to our lovely and talented sponsors: Dice, Jive, TalentWise, Hootsuite, IBM, Career Builder, PeopleFluent, JobSite. Shout outs to our friends who put on the Predictive Analytics World for Workforce Conference and our social analytics partner out there in Cali, HR Marketer Insight. We also want to give a special shout out to our friends over at the Candidate Experience Awards. Kevin and I are both volunteer ambassadors over there and really proud to be part of that and really excited to be sharing more insights from all that research that's going on over there right now. So
in fact,
here
exactly.
Stuff.
Here, real quick though, I want to say something real quick about the candies. So later today, I'm going to be at Candidate Experience Workshop 101. They've been doing these regional events where they're getting practitioners in a room and they're talking shop and doing some fun exercises and really talking about talent acquisition strategy. So they've been doing them all over the place. Today's is going to be in San Francisco from 1 to 5 at the San Francisco Green Space on Mission, I believe. Anyway, and then right after that, which will be fun, is that we're having a PeopleFluent happy hours for anybody in the area, and that's at Chaya. Chaya, which is a really cool, which I never would have been, being the big foodie that I'm not, even though I like to eat. It's like a French-Japanese hybrid cuisine.
French-Japanese. Okay, I've heard it all.
There you go.
That's officially a new hybrid, and I'm a foodie, by the way. That's new to me, so that's good news.
All right.
Well, have fun, and I'm assuming since you're there that in PeopleFluent sponsoring it that there's going to be plenty of cheap Chardonnay. Is that correct?
There'll be good Chardonnay.
That you like?
Just the cheap stuff for me. Everything else will be good. Just the cheap stuff for me.
Everything else is good. Yeah.
There you go.
I'm not touching that, by the way. I don't drink cheap Chardonnay. Just so the world knows. Kevin and I have very different tastes when it comes to wine, but we're still friends after all these years.
Well, but that's just hey, I do actually, no, I really do like really good Chardonnay, but that's kind of the fun joke that it's the cheap stuff. It's the Candy Awards and Jerry Christmas. Anyway, let's talk about the show. What are we going to do? What are we going to do?
All right, so last week, last week was super high energy with the one and only Ted Rubin. We were talking about how to look people in the eye digitally. And today we're talking about how to turn horrible bosses into happier relationships for everybody. You know, today we're kind of faced in this very complex landscape, right, that we've never really seen before in the world of work. Regardless, I think, of job growth and, you know, unemployment plummeting, wages are still pretty flat, and employers and workers are under a great deal of strain to kind of produce and show up. And, you know, that beast of business that we all talk about keeps asking us to do more with less. Unfortunately, a bad boss can undermine your ability to get your stuff done. You know what I'm saying? Efficiently, effectively, poor communication skills, lack of direction, micromanaging, and bullying, which is something I absolutely despise, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. Any of these traits can make a boss difficult to work with. Working for a tyrant boss is just sucky, okay? So when you have to work for difficult and demanding people every day, that stress, that frustration, that anger can totally wipe the life out of you. So I'm really excited to talk about some techniques today for reinventing relationships with your boss. And heck, you know, I think it's with your colleagues, with, you know, your family. I mean, just how to not be a sucky person is what we're talking about today, okay? And how to turn horrible into happy. So if you're listening today, and we hope you are, tune on in. And we've got the Twitters going on right now with T-Chat. Come be part of it. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, exactly. And again, just really excited about our new time going forward. We want to welcome today Tony DeBlau. He is the founder of consulting firm HR for Change. And for over a decade, Tony's worked with Silicon Valley companies in various roles related to building people strategies. He's also an award-winning author and mobile app developer. He has been quoted in several media sources, including CareerBuilder, Monster, and CBS Money Watch. Welcome, Tony, to our new Time and T-Chat show.
Thanks, Kevin. Hey, Megan, how's it going?
Good.
It's going. So glad you're here with us today.
Yes, it's an overcast day in Silicon Valley, which is unusual, but you know, I guess we're getting used to that. Kevin, you know about that. It's probably gray and overcast where you are too.
Well, yeah, we're getting tons of high fog. At least there's some moisture in the air, Tony, because that's about all the rain we're going to be getting of late. So if there's something that's soaking into the ground in the plants, so we can just be thankful about that, right? Tony, why don't you tell us first a little bit more about yourself and what led you to talk about this topic we're talking about today?
Sure, absolutely. So, you know, my background is, you know, I've had, you know, over a decade of experience working in human resources, organizational leadership development, primarily in high-tech companies in Silicon Valley. And that's run the gamut from startup to mid-size, large companies. And so I've been able to be exposed to quite a lot of different environments and, you know, a lot of different organizational dynamics and behaviors. And so one of the main things that I've obviously worked on is employee relations, coaching leaders, those kinds of things. And so over that period of time, I've observed quite a few things. I've, you know, tried to apply a lot of different models and best practices and so forth. And so, you know, when we talk about employee engagement and how always in the top 3, top 5, it's always the relationship with the manager. And, you know, I leave a manager, I don't leave a company, and that whole thing. I spent a little bit more time looking at, okay, well, you know, what's the reality of that? Right, you know, there's, you know, what really happens in the trenches, so to speak, when you're trying to deal with, let's call it an ineffective relationship with, you know, your superior. And so I spent, you know, some time trying some things. You know, this is all real life experiences to try to see what are the kinds of things that could work, especially in situations where it's not so simple to just say, I'm going to leave or I'm going to quit, you know, sort of like the normal advice people tell you to do. You know, life's too short, you know, don't stick around and all that stuff. It's like, well, what happens if you can't? Or, you know, what happens if, you know, you're jumping too fast and maybe there was an alternative. So that's what I really kind of coalesced into some of my practices, certainly around coaching, but also what led to the base of the book, Tangling with Tyrants.
Oh,
excellent.
Sweet. When did that book come out?
It came out a few years ago, and, since then I was really surprised. I mean, it's really a humbling experience, when you get emails and actually letters from people talking about, well, this really helped me. It's a different spin. It's not just, the bully boss is obviously the thing that makes the media, but,
right.
bosses
right.
behaving badly or what I consider a tyrant can be passive-aggressive behaviors too. So it was really well received, and I've been able to see how it's helped a lot of people at least reframe or just rethink a little bit how they're going to approach what seems to be an otherwise unsolvable situation.
So just tell us, your top 3 takeaways. Obviously, not everybody is an overtly bad boss or, sucky, as I like to say, right? Forgive, I have a trucker mouth today. I'm so sorry. But how do you determine what specifically your challenges are here? How do you, when we talk about those kind of diffuse behaviors you're talking about, right? Those are the ones that aren't so obvious. And are there any signs that you have a really bad boss?
Yeah. So, to be honest, I'll tell you that a lot of at least the use cases or the stories that I've been involved with are subtle. They creep up on you. So, for example, a new boss has joined a team, and it takes a few months for them to kind of work their way around, or somebody's transitioned between divisions or recently promoted. These are things that I've noticed are what sort of appear. So when we look at how work behavior often invites this kind of behavior into the workplace, a lot of times it's companies that are going through transition or there's some other kind of crisis, and they need that person who, I guess, leads with the stick and not the carrot, right? And really wants to clean things up, drive things, and it's clearly there's got to be people and process problems, and we need somebody who's going to be more in that strong, almost dictatorial stance to come and make it happen. So a lot of times these events happen somewhat subtly, and the eyes kind of turn to this more controlling person or personality that has had success in turning things around or making change and so forth. So that's where I've seen most of it. But signs, tend to be so, regardless of how this is happening suddenly over time or whatever, it's true. You're always looking for patterns. Like everything else, and I tell people in HR, what gets people into trouble is the patterns of things that happen that then turn into a, major problem like harassment and so forth.
Right, right. That never really get brought to the surface, right?
Right, exactly. Because people have different levels of what they're willing to bear, right? So I look at it as people who tend to be more along the sort of I should worry red flags coming up is a lot of not seeking to understand or seeking to listen. So if I'm a new boss in an environment, in a team environment where I don't know what's going on, I'm trying to, figure out what's happening, there's a choice, and there's something I would look for, is if the person's coming in and saying, here's what I'm going to do, right? We're going to do this, we need to do this, we need to do that, do this, right? They're not even stopping to say, well, hold on, what have you, talk to me about your background, what have you had, what are your challenges, right? That's more collaborative leader, whereas somebody wants to come in and just start to immediately dictate, clearly I know what's wrong, right? So we're going to go do this. A lot of I statements, I will, and, so that's, to me, that's a first dead giveaway, right? That this person's probably going to be less willing to have that partnership to fix a problem and more, I am the cowboy, I am the knight on the horse riding in, and I'm going to save the day and be the hero.
But Tony, but let me, how, you're talking about a lot of the different patterns and behaviors to look for, but how should one go about that's immersed in this? How should they go about documenting this, right? Because that's really, you do need to do some level of that, especially to prevent an escalation that may occur down the road, right? So, and how do you do that in a way that protects yourself as well as the organization?
Yeah, I think let's start with the individual level.
Yeah.
Because again, to me, it's certainly as an HR person, it's fairly simplistic, document. But see, because these things kind of sneak up on you. There's this realization that I have a problem, right? There's this realization that I've seen a series of behaviors, the way I've been treated, that's making me recognize this person is probably, again, somebody that's going to be either a bully or tyrant, or somebody that's going to make my job and my experience at work a problem. I think that before you jump to documentation of these behaviors, you have to take this step back and take a look at it, like, what exactly am I seeing that's happening that's harmful to me, that's impeding my emotional well-being, my productivity, these kinds of things. Because if you don't have a focus on what exactly is being impacted by the behavior you're being exposed to, then it's really difficult to have the proper documentation, right? Because documentation should be around, these are specific things that is happening between us or that you're doing that is creating a business impact to me, i.e., I can't get this project done, I don't have the right information, you're focusing on the wrong things, we're going in the wrong direction. So the documentation has to back up an actual business impact, because it's not that companies, generally speaking, don't care how you feel. And again, I'm someone who doesn't believe that you can, use the legal system to manage a jerk. Okay, it's more just
jerk.
Yeah, because a lot of people, in HR, as soon as they have a problem, they run to HR. Oh, you got to fire this guy. Oh, you got to do this guy. It's like, well, hold on a second. Okay, in business, you may be having this issue, but what is it impacting? Business-wise, I care about your emotional thing. That's a whole engagement and retention thing on its own. But the documentation that matters, the documentation that will get people, not just in HR, but up the chain to pay attention, is that as a result of this behavior, these things aren't happening with myself, with the team, and so forth. So that's how I would just sort of characterize the documentation. It has to be specific things that are leading to specific business impacts for it to have any real weight.
Right.
And then, of course, you layer it with the emotional stuff, right, because it becomes a retention thing. But it starts with the business impact.
It's not what happens with, just real quick, and then we move to other related topics, but with the...
Kevin, you're breaking up.
So here, tell me, recently with how just...
Hey, Kevin, we can't quite hear you. You're kind of coming in and out. So I'm going to hop on in here for you and ask the question that I think is probably on a lot of people's mind right now. When is quitting an option for employees? And, like, what do you recommend to people when they're like, I just can't deal anymore. This boss is just horrific. Like, what do you do,
Yeah, and again, I can tell you, I've seen all shades of that, right? I've seen how that behavior can lead to burnout, to workplace depression, which are two very distinct things, by the way.
Can you tell us just how they're distinct? Because that's an interesting nuance.
Yeah, so burnout tends to be, the behavior you see around burnout is that they blame everybody else. Oh, it's the manager, they don't know this. Oh, the company doesn't know what they're doing. Oh, my team sucks. That's more I've come to the edge of I'm overwhelmed with my job, and I'm trying to find blame as to why this is occurring. Workplace depression tends to show behavior that is more I'm just not good enough for this anymore. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing. It's more that internal reflective. I'm taking it all, and I don't feel worthy, and I don't feel whatever. So the nonverbals that go with that, burnout tends to be more animated because it's outward to others, and then the depression is more inward, and you tend to see people more unwilling to speak, shying away, a lot of absenteeism. So that's where I kind of look at, the both sides. And I've seen one single bad leader, bad boss drive different people down those paths. And, it's funny when we talk about how do we deal with that, right, and when quitting isn't an option.
Because it's not for so many people. I mean, I think that's an honest take.
No.
Right. It is. It's true. In most of the cases that I've had, there's a variety of reasons what drives that. Interestingly, in Silicon Valley, a lot of times it's tied to their visa. They're tied to the company.
Right.
So they can't leave. Right. So they're stuck. Or things like they have a 401k loan. That's a huge loan. They can't leave because they have to pay it back if they leave the company. So you can go through a litany of reasons why it's not just, I have a bad boss, I have to leave, right? And I think that, what I try to talk about certainly in my coaching and I talk about in the book is getting back to this idea of, if you put the emotion aside for a second, yes, nobody should be treated this way. If somebody's bullying you, or again, I think passive-aggressive is actually worse because those are behaviors that tend to be, they have conversations behind your back about how you're not a good performer, and then they smile nicely to your face, or, innuendo comments like
that is just such a deal breaker for culture.
No, absolutely, and so it's important.
Back. Can you hear me?
We can kind of hear you, but you're just barely.
You're still choppy.
You're still a little choppy over there, Santa Cruz.
So much for the Skype. Okay, so there you go. Now? Can you hear now?
No, you're in and out, my friend. We can keep
Megan's
trying
gonna
though.
have to run the show.
Yeah, there you go. I think it's time.
Yeah.
So, obviously everybody comes to a place, and I know I've had my own set of horrible bosses when I wasn't self-employed, right? Who hasn't probably, and everybody's version of what a horrible boss is so probably varies quite a bit if we actually did some data around it. But
right.
What's going on in your world with your career, Tony? I mean, have you had a horrible boss before? And
yes.
If so, did that lead you to kind of what you've been focusing on in your consulting practice? Tell us just a little bit more on the personal side of Tony.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was starting, I was one of those, I fell into HR, which, I'm sure a lot of people in your audience will have similar stories. They didn't start in HR, they fell into HR. And
I can hear that. Yep.
Yeah, so I fell into HR by way of recruiting. And
I was when I was still an active practitioner, and I've moved away from that. I was a recruiter as well. That's kind of where I started in this whole talent management space. So, and those were when we were still actually saying HR and recruiting are the same under the same umbrella. And now there's 9 flavors.
Oh, they're the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be a whole nother talent show, a talent culture show.
That's
because,
a whole exactly.
This whole idea that we need to distinguish recruiting. It's like, guys, it's still HR, okay? It's a specialization with HR. Let's leave it at that. So, so I had a bad experience. I was doing recruiting. I was a generalist, and I had my first big opportunity with VP Global Division, big deal, and I was all excited, and I did all my pre-work. I did their org charts. I looked at their comp. I wanted to really make a good first impression because one of my early jobs in HR. And I'll never forget the scene. I walked in, and it's so classic, right? Big desk, big, mahogany desk, big high-back chair, and this guy, sitting was on the phone. We had a scheduled appointment, a whole thing. And I walked in the door. He didn't get off the phone. He just kind of looked at me and pointed to a chair that was in front of this big desk.
Oh, my God.
No problem. Yeah, no problem. I came in. Yeah, I sat down. I was all ready to go. And, he's still on the phone as I'm sitting down.
No.
And then I hear he's like, yeah, I'll meet you at 4 or I'll meet you at 3 and we'll tee off and we'll do it. So it was a personal call. Okay. So, okay, fine. That actually lasted another 3 minutes that he was doing this personal call. So fine, afterwards. So he hung up the phone. Didn't get so high, welcome, whatever. He folded his hands and he looked at me and he said, I just want you to know that I make the decisions around here. I decide who I hire, who I fire, and what goes on. And nobody from HR is going to tell me what to do otherwise.
Nice.
And that was how he introduced himself.
Sweet.
Wow.
This
I know.
Really a great opportunity for me to really shine.
Yeah, absolutely. So here I was all prepared. And again, he was my sort of my dotted line manager. So, I was still reporting to HR, but basically he could influence my performance review, my bonus plan, everything else, because that's how this company was structured. And so I sat there dumbfounded, and so I started to kind of open my mouth and try to recover from the situation, and his phone rang, and he picked it up, and he started, talking like, yeah, okay. He turned to me, and he basically said, kind of pointed at the phone and then waved. That was the end of the meeting.
He pointed at the phone and waved?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
This sounds like a movie script. Seriously,
wow.
Like this is just too horrific.
You should write that out.
Like that's just ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, no, I talk about that in the book because as I was walking out the door, you could imagine so many things were crashing in my head. Did I pick the right profession? Why did I choose to work here? So all these things were happening to me, and I definitely think that gave me a base into the work that I did, since then, and
right.
Trying to understand when somebody comes to me who's clearly in pain, not just angry, but in pain, hopeless, right? Feeling like I don't know what else to do. I like I said, it really helped solidify that emotional compassion connection to say, yeah, I am not just this, whatever view you have of HR, and people have all these different views, right? I'm not an administrative HR guy. I've always come from the business side. So for me, I've always taken, well, what does it mean to have somebody emotionally crippled working under this roof? Clearly not everything's getting done. Clearly this person's not being leveraged. So I'm looking at all of these sort of, organizational impacts of one key but one relationship, and how much is this person creating that problem? So Megan, going back to that whole subjective thing, I agree. One person's tyrant is not another person's tyrant. I think we know
right.
that. But I think it is safe to say that there are certain behaviors that, if you read all the research or you look at all the models and the case studies and things that are out there, there tends to be a pretty good set of data around when leaders, seek to understand, leverage the strengths of people, provide, balanced feedback and so forth. These aren't just myths, pie in the sky things. It's a set of behaviors that go into motion that let people feel like I'm enabled to add value. And that's one of the biggest things of what drive people to leave companies is that sense of, am I adding value? Am I doing something that makes me feel like I'm contributing well? So if you have behaviors that are counter to that make you feel incompetent, or that make you feel, well, it doesn't matter what you do, or everything you do is wrong, or whatever, you're going to take a fundamental part of what make organizations function and throw it out the door. So it's no wonder.
I think what tyrant bosses do best is instill a sense of learned hopelessness in their employees.
Oh, very much. Very much so.
I mean, it's like, and that's exactly that scenario and I see this unfolding still today. It's still a trend around culture topics and workplace topics, obviously.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tyrants out there.
We're down. Sorry, folks. We're down to the Gremlin Skype experiment gone awry. I'm back again, but we're down to a minute and a half. So listen.
Welcome back.
Tony, it was a fantastic discussion today. Real quick, something to think about. I know we're not going to have time to really dive into it, but I'm just curious if you got 30 seconds on how gender diversity impacts a lot of what we've been talking about today. There's been a lot of write-up, especially a focus on Silicon Valley disparity in that regard. So do you have any quick comments about that?
Yeah. I think it's safe to say that there are probably good, case studies out there that some of these, classic tyrant behaviors tend to be more with guys, more with males, more of that male dominance thing, and it's more of a impact, with women, and part of that is because you have in many companies, as we saw with reports that came out recently of sort of big companies and their diversity numbers, that women, there's not a big representation to begin with. So you already have a fairly male-dominated org structure, and so that if you add on top of that these behaviors floating around, I think that you probably see that impact on how women perceive how that relationship is, how they can fix their relationship, what it means to their promotion opportunities and so forth, than it does with men. Now that said, there is a small group of research that's starting to emerge about women-oriented tyrants, and do they show similar behaviors? Do they enact ways in similar ways? Because they exist, but I think that there's fewer of them.
Yeah.
And the only other one point I want to add to sort of either the gender and just the topic in general about when do I know I've kind of absolutely come to a person where I'm trying to address it. I feel like I've looked myself in the mirror. I'm doing the right things. I'm business focused and all these other things in terms of my conversation with this person. I would say about 5% of this, what you want to call sort of generic population of bad bosses, bullies, tyrants, whatever, are true sociopaths. And if you get into a sociopath, right, like a Dexter-level sociopath,
we could do a whole other show about that, Tony.
Those are ones where you're going to hit a dead end no matter what you do. I mean, it's
right.
a whole different ball game.
Well, we're out of time. We already ran out, but I didn't want to stop you because I loved how we ended that. But now we got to jump to the Twitter chat. So, are you ready to go, Tony, to come fire up with the community on Twitter?
Oh yes, I've been seeing it coming through already.
Nice. Well, thanks so much for being here, Tony. We appreciate it, and you're definitely somebody I'm excited to meet in person one of these days. So
absolutely.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Talk to you later.
Okay.
Thank
Twitter
you.
chat time. What's going on?